Hello, I'm Michael Gilmore. I'm the founder of the Money Awareness and Inclusion Awards that were founded 4 years ago in the help of finding more projects all over the world that work on financial literacy, financial education, and of course, financial inclusion. And we're very happy to be able to present this panel as part of Financial Inclusion Week and as part of building resilience through financial inclusion. Because we want to present the argument that financial education and financial literacy are vital to the world of financial inclusion. And I have with me for this panel two of our winners from the 2025 MAIAs, and that is Francis Yong from Byte, which is a Singapore-based digital literacy and anti-scam project that won the anti-scam category this year. And I also have with us Surya Banda, who was the only entry this year to win 2 categories at the MAIAs. His Multiply by the Creador Foundation was the winner for the best nonprofit working in a developing economy, and also for closing the gender gap, if I'm not wrong, Surya. So both of these people, both of these projects are working at this combination of financial literacy and financial education, but also financial inclusion, particularly helping people become included in the financial system, because education is an incredibly important part of financial inclusion. And if we are discussing financial resilience, it is a crucial part of that. So I want to start by asking Francis because I give a very quick description of what you do, Francis. But I would be very interested in you telling us the backstory of really how you started Byte, why you started Byte, and really what you focus on and who the targets, the beneficiaries are of Byte.
Well, thank you, Michael. I'm really honored for you to have selected myself, and congratulations, Surya, for being the other winner as well in your category. To your question, how did Byte start? My background is in fraud and cybercrime risk, and in that role, what I do is I write educational programs to upskill internal specialists, as well as to work with the communications team on what do we tell customers on how they should be protecting themselves against fraud and scams. And then during the COVID pandemic lockdown, my mother was scammed. So she was by herself in Malaysia, and all of us are in a different country, and there's no way we were able to be there with her. And during that time, she was 80, and she lost all her savings that she has had up to that stage. And I was thinking to myself, when I found out about it, it was about a year later when the lockdown was lifted, we were able to cross borders. And then I began to ask myself, all this knowledge that I have about scam prevention, about fraud, and I'm teaching internal specialists as well as helping customers with that. But then my mother got scammed, and it got me thinking that there are all these broad-based education, which was what I was putting out as well, but there are pockets of communities out there who do not understand or who can't fully grasp what all these broad-based education means. And at the same time, with the acceleration of the adoption for digitalization, a lot of our services and a lot of our banking transactions are going online, and I can see that it's becoming a burden to certain pockets of the community. And so I decided that I need to think about how do I educate just these different segments in a different way, and it could mean more customization, a little bit more hand holding. So I decided to get Byte going, and that's how I started.
That's wonderful. Well, it's terrible, but it's wonderful that you made that reaction to it. That's every crisis is an opportunity. So we'll come back to ask you a little bit more about that. But Surya, please tell us about Multiply. It'd be a good idea, because one of the reasons I selected you both is obviously you're winners, but obviously working in different countries and in different ways to help resilience and help inclusion through education.
Yep. Firstly, thank you, Michael, for having me as part of this panel. And Thank you and congratulations to you too, Francis, for being a winner for this year's Maya Awards. So to quickly talk about Multiply. So Multiply is a financial education initiative which was envisioned by Mrs. Shanti and Mr. Brahman. They are our trustees of Creador Foundation, and they had this idea that providing financial education access to everyone is important, so that they can actually change their lives for the better. And at Multiply by Creador Foundation, we focus on providing access to information on platforms where our users or our audience are already on, and we focus mainly on personal finance as well as on entrepreneurship. And in India specifically, we focus on women as our target audience, women from low income households, with the idea that they can learn whenever and wherever they would like to learn.
Excellent, excellent. And I said, so come back to you, Francis, because I was, I mean, one of the things I was thinking of was you were speaking was, I mean, being susceptible to, well, being less susceptible to scams is possibly one of the most important ways that we can become financially resilient in the modern world. And that's what my next question for you was how do you go about building financial resilience in your beneficiaries, what that means to you, and if that's your primary goal, if you have other goals, and how you think about that. But I think it would also be very interesting to hear your opinions on how we open up, how financial inclusion opens up to scams and therefore a lower resilience.
Mm. So last year, I was invited to speak to industry specialists in the banking sector. When I looked at the numbers last year in terms of how fast um, the, or rather, what is the focus of banking the unbanked is,
Mm.
so, and digitalization has certainly enabled that. I go to Bhutan and it is almost totally cashless.
Wow.
Even in the remote villages where a peddler comes and they sell their homegrown vegetables, they will give me a QR code and just say, scan here. I don't have a bank account. I'm going to give you cash. So when we think about banking the unbanked, and then I was thinking to myself, and I asked my colleague, can you translate? Like, does she know what phishing means? And she's like, yeah. Then I said, okay, so what did she say phishing is? And she said fake news. It's like, okay. So
Mm-hmm.
they have definitely heard of phishing, but they don't quite know how it works and what it really is.
Mm.
So that got me thinking. I do totally support enabling banking facilities, financial facilities, and financial inclusion for the unbanked, but it also then opens them up to a certain amount of risks if they do not know how it is, what it is, and what they are getting themselves into. The simple analogy would be that, hey, Madam Peddler, you don't need to walk from your home to there. I'm going to give you a car. Here it is. Here are the car keys. Get in, and then you're going to get to your
Yeah.
destination in 2 minutes. But
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to get there at all, with the car. So this is what it is. Like, we give them a banking facility, but if we don't actually, in the first place, teach them what digital literacy means, what the risks of digital literacy is, then they would not know how to protect themselves. The In Southeast Asia itself, 96% of the population below 65 years old are connected. They would
Mm.
minimally have one mobile device. That's almost 100%, right? 96%.
Mm.
And 50%, almost 50% of the amount lost in the last 12 months is $10 billion dollars
Wow.
under 1 hour. So
Wow.
think about that. Scams are
Yeah.
completed in less than 1 hour,
Mm.
and the amount that's being siphoned off is 10 billion. And
Yeah.
if we think about the GDP of the smaller Southeast Asian countries, does it even come to $10 billion?
Mm. Well, yes, but not. It's a big
I mean,
chunk. It's a
yes,
big
it's just
chunk.
a big chunk. Correct, correct, correct.
Yeah,
So the total amount that's being siphoned off is actually 24 billion,
yeah,
right? And
incredible.
that is in less than a day. So that's in a
Yeah,
matter of hours. It's 24 billion. So the point that I wanted to make is while we are driving financial inclusion, um, we can't forget that the foundation, and I'm very strong about this, is that digital literacy needs to come first. You need to first show them how do you unlock the car? Where is the engine? How do you pump in the petrol? So same thing. This is your phone. Do you have your antivirus in there? Do you have do you need all these applications in here? What are all these five things? Do you know what it does? You know, what are all these features? Do you know how to block unwanted numbers? These are the digital literacy that they need to know in order to protect themselves at the very first layer before they even download a banking application.
yeah, very good. Surya, I'm going to move to you because I remember when we spoke last, we were discussing, if I remember correctly, one of the things you talked about was the fact that there were accounts available, or let's say the post office in India, for people to
Yep.
go and open and get savings accounts at the post office. But the people didn't know how to open them. They didn't know what they needed to bring.
Yep.
And this to me strikes right at the heart of where inclusion meets financial literacy and financial education, is not just like, oh, what is savings, what is debt, what is interest rate, what is inflation, but how do I actually open this account?
Absolutely.
Could you give me some more on that, and how you think that plays into resilience and plays into economic growth and economic capabilities?
Yes, some numbers I would want to put out is since 2014, the current government has come into power. They have run this huge financial inclusion program called Jandan program, where the idea was to open bank accounts for the unbanked, right? And they have been successful in opening around 560 million accounts, right? Around
560 million accounts.
accounts, yeah. I
Wow.
mean, population is 1.4 billion,
I
right?
know, but still, it's a big number.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is, recently there was a news that 23% of these accounts are still inoperative,
Right.
right? And they have closed around 1.5 million accounts because they've tried reaching out to these account owners. There was no response. They've never visited the bank. They've never operated through digital modules as well. So essentially, the bank saw that there was no reason to run them. Anyway,
Mm.
some conversations happening on that. But the idea is, as you rightly pointed out, Michael, the access is there, in
Mm.
this day and age, but people still don't use it because they don't know how to use it or they don't know what to do with it. It also comes with a lack of trust in institutions
Mm-hmm.
because they're not aware that there's always this inherent fear that they might lose that money if they put it in the bank account, or they might sort of not get the benefit of actually accessing a particular financial product or a particular financial program that the government is running, right? So, for example, there's a government offers a very highly subsidized insurance program for people. Many people are aware of it. They don't know how to actually go and sign up for it or how to benefit from it. So we at Multiply, the core idea or the resilience, financial resilience that we're working towards is people should have access to information, right? So that they can take a decision based on their situation, right? We don't look at it as, oh, you sort of have access to all of these, you just go and use it. Doesn't happen, right?
Mm.
I know there are so many things available for me, but when do I use what
Yeah.
is the information that they should be having access to, especially in times of crisis. Because if you look at low
Yes.
income households, I can say from the experience of India, finance is an important thing, but there are a lot of other things happening in their lives, right? They have to go
Yeah.
and they have to take care of their children. There are so many other things. So they're not constantly thinking about how to manage my finances. Maybe they're not preparing for certain emergencies that might come. But when there's an emergency, there's always a tendency to actually go to a loan shark or an informal money lender and take
Mm.
money and be indebted forever. So, having them the current information on what are the current welfare programs or the current financial products that they can benefit from, how to use them, becomes a very important, like what Francis mentioned, it is very important for them to be able to understand how to use these. And yeah, that's
Yes.
what we focus on.
I'd like to stay with you because I think one of the things you mentioned when we last talked is actually the way, because I'd like to get into nitty gritty here a little bit. The way that you do that. So let's say that however millions of people are eligible for a particular insurance program, and that it's this is really valuable for them, and yet they're not signing up. How do you change that? And I mean, and do you sometimes think it's like, well, I mean, you could think to yourself, it's not my job to change that. It's the person who's offering the insurance program, right? So how do you think through that and then go about changing it?
Yeah, so two things I want to address there, Michael, is one, um, knowing about it and acting on it are two different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So people might have heard of it. The government or whoever is the service provider, they are already talking about it. They are mentioning how it is beneficial, etc. But somewhere they might not be able to communicate how you actually go ahead with the process of getting the benefit of it. That's one. The second thing what I would want to say is sometimes, as I mentioned like earlier as well, the issue is with what happens if I actually go ahead and do it, right?
Mm.
What after I sign up?
Yeah.
So we focus on creating these bite-sized videos on how you actually go ahead with the process of getting a benefit. And you also, sort of, for example, how you can claim an insurance after you sign up for it, that many people don't talk about, right? You
Yeah.
only get to hear about, oh, you have to go get an insurance, but what after that? Because we have heard many such instances where people have ended up taking up, let's say, signing up for an insurance policy, but they didn't know the terms and conditions of how they could get the money back, right? And in
Yeah.
the process, they could never get it back, or they might receive very little amount because of various reasons. So, the micro learning part is very important, where we look at it as keep sending them short information, making it accessible to them through YouTube, through Facebook. That's why we have built a huge subscriber base of 1 million users, as well as on WhatsApp, we have close to 30,000 women to whom we keep sending this information on a regular basis. And to be sort of honest, we have also figured out what times work out for them. So we now know that, maybe late in the evening or early in the morning or in the afternoon when they have time, we send out this information to them to get their attention.
Mm.
Also, WhatsApp gives us a two-way communication channel, right? We get to know what their needs are, what kind of challenges they're specifically facing, so that we can help them solve better. So I feel that kind of targeted approach, helps, because the other point, maybe what I want to talk about is about this huge evidence base, which talks about how financial inclusion is more impactful than financial education. There, the two things I want to say is financial inclusion. Yes, it is important, but as I was mentioning, that without the knowledge, it might actually cause more harm. So some examples I can say is, um, you know, the insurance mis-selling I just spoke about. The other thing is microfinance initiatives.
Mm.
A lot of people now take microfinance loans, micro loans, without knowing how to use them for creating productive assets or productive enterprises, end up falling into debt traps, not being able to pay back. So it actually backfires. And very
Yeah.
recently, during COVID and after COVID, there was this huge crypto wave, right? People were very interested in making money, quick money through crypto. There were also apps that were promoting crypto through celebrities, etc. A lot of youth in India lost a lot of money by investing in these cryptos
Yeah.
without understanding how they actually work. So, yeah, my first point is you have to know how to sort of benefit from these products. Otherwise, inclusion doesn't make sense. And secondly, the evidence, which I was talking about, how they say that financial inclusion is more impactful than education. I do agree because, in a way, financial education, the initiatives that have been evaluated are traditional classroom type initiatives, right? Where
Yeah.
you're expected to come into a 2 to 3 day long sessions, and you're taught everything, from savings to investing to insurance to how to run your business and everything. And the audience we are dealing with are not the ones who are like, they're not academic, right? They're not going to sit down, take your notes, and go back home, revise them, and then take financial decisions. So obviously, it's not
Yeah.
going to do much impact, right? They're
Well,
not.
and it's also a little bit catch-22, because obviously if you don't have inclusion and you just teach someone, then it can't change their outcome because they don't have the inclusion. But
Yep.
if you give them the inclusion and you don't teach them, then there can be some minor changes, but actually you run these huge risks. Which I'll come back to you, sorry, Francis, because I'd like to hear your take specifically on what you actually do, and move through as Surya did towards discussing that danger that we have of when we don't really teach people how they should be included.
Well, in Singapore, I do work with an organization that supports low-income women. And when they invited me to go in and teach them digital literacy, I was like, sure, I'll come in and do digital literacy. But really, what I wanted to teach them was scam prevention.
Yeah,
So I think if you think about financial inclusion and financial education, it's probably in the same way, in that same approach. So I
yeah,
went in to teach digital literacy, but in teaching them digital literacy, my end point was also asking myself, what skills, what digital skills can they make use of to improve their current financial situation? So at the end of this course, can we then put them into a business accelerator program, start teaching them little ways of how do you stretch your dollar, but they
mm,
first need to understand digital literacy. What are the tools available, and what should they not do to prevent scams from happening to themselves? So that was the approach that I've taken. And from the testimonials of the individuals who have gone onto it, um, one of the most memorable ones for me is this lady says, "Now I could create a share drive, and my entire family will look at my spreadsheet, and they will know how much money we have spent for the month, and then we will
mm,
collectively decide." Do we repair the screen on the broken phone, or do we wait for another month? So if we were to use this amount, let's input it, and then my 10-year-old son can see if I put in the amount for the repair, this is what's gonna look like, which means we need to sacrifice something else. So I would see that as financial education,
mm,
and using digital literacy, and at the same time with the understanding of scam prevention in the background, it actually protects their financial standing a lot better because they know what's going to happen, that what they know that's going to, and how to protect their expenses from not actually falling into the wrong hands.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Mm.
Very, very important. I, Francis, I'm intrigued because both of you rather, are working in the non-profit sector. You're both charity projects to varying degrees and working. You're not a big bank that's driving financial inclusion. I'd love to hear your experiences of working, whether it's with big corporates or with smaller corporates, or the people that are driving actual financial inclusion, as to what they do well, or if you think they don't do it at all and they just think, here's the product, let people find it, don't tell them what the downsides might be. What's been your experience of that, of the drive to financial inclusion?
Well, I left the large corporates after COVID, and then but pre-COVID, I think the situation was quite different. There were some talks, and fintechs were beginning to come up, but it's really during the end stage of the pandemic that we see a lot more fintechs coming up.
Mm,
And what fintechs do is they will say, okay, you can just bank in. You can register for a bank, and very similar to how Surya has spoken about opening a bank account with the post office. So they say this is the facility. All we need is your SingPass, and in Singapore we have an e-identity.
Yeah.
You don't really need a physical card. Come to the bank, and we'll do everything for you. If you and you can pretty much do it all by yourself, and you are encouraged to DIY, to do it all by
Hmm.
yourself at home. Download the app and then just click a button to say, I allow you to access my e-identity, and that's it. And that's all you have. And so now you have a banking account
Yeah.
in a fintech firm. And then after that, you would have to kind of make sense of what are they saying? What does this mean? What is OTP? Oh, wait, biometric? What is biometric? So
Yeah.
remember, this is 2, 3 years ago. What is
Yeah.
biometric? I don't know. Does it measure something? So all these things, I even for us now. So yes, just a few days ago, I was at a conference again, and I asked the room, and they are professionals. They are informed professionals in a certain level of seniority, and I asked them. So a bit of background, Surya. In Singapore, we have this really fantastic feature called Money Lock. So you can
Mm.
activate it, and then the bank will lock up a certain percentage of whatever amount that you want, and it's supposed to be scam proof. So it cannot be siphoned off, and if in for you to actually unlock it, you have to go to the bank to do it. So anyway, it's a fantastic feature. When I asked the room, how many of you have the money lock feature activated? That was a room full of packed individuals, only two put up their hands.
Yeah.
Right. And I said I haven't either because I couldn't make sense. I couldn't even find where it is on the on my app. And then so we are all very busy individuals. So we say, okay,
Yeah.
I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And then we don't.
Yeah.
Right. So how to answer very simply, how do the banks do it? How do large organizations do it? In Singapore, it's very easy. They just say it's available. Sign up
Yeah.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really convenient. Mm.
That sounds so similar to what Surya was talking about. I mean, it's, they just assume that inclusion just assumes people will know how to use it. And I wonder, this is for both of you, I mean, but Surya, you can take this. Do you think there's an extent to which the financial inclusion technology, so let's be very clear about this, not just fintechs, but also the financial inclusion technology people, do you think they worry that they'll get less inclusion if they insert an education layer into the process, and that people will drop out of the process of actually signing up? Or what do you think it is? I'd be interested in your view because you do work on this.
Yep. So the way I would look at it is, Michael, because the financial inclusion, like the banks and other folks, it does take up a lot of their time focusing on the product, on how to get people included. But maybe they're not able to give enough time, or I don't know, whatever the reasons could be, in terms of how do you educate people, right? Like what just Francis said, that's what most of the banks also do. They actually put out a lot of content in terms of building awareness. The federal bank also does it. But the biggest challenge is with information overload on the internet. So many, so much content out there. How do we get the attention of the people is very
Yeah.
important, right? You can't do boring stuff anymore. People will not watch you more than
Damn.
30 seconds, right? So you really need to figure out a way to tell a story. You need to add some drama. You need to make it really interesting, relatable to the audience to actually get their attention, to make them understand. And our job is that you can't just say that I'm putting out information. If people don't want to access it, not my problem. It's not going to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
You have to work a lot more. It's a challenge, it's difficult, but how do you get their attention? How do you make it easy for them to understand? Because finance as such is a seen as at least a very complicated or difficult topic, right? And
Yeah.
especially our women think that it's not relevant for them. If I'm going to put it out just like, oh, mutual funds are, XYZ, they're never going to watch it, or
No.
let's say I'm talking about a post office bank account, they think this is not of their interest, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make it interesting for them is, I feel, something that is missing. For various reasons, I feel they don't spend time or they don't think in that way. But what I can say for sure, which is working for us, is that approach of actually making it palatable and easy to understand. I feel will improve the financial education
Yeah.
rates.
And I see
Yeah.
you doing that too, Francis. I've had the pleasure. Surya, I've not been to any of your classes, but I have been to one of Francis's classes. So it's one of the advantages of being in the same country. And you could see that it was very relatable, and the people were working on things that they understood, and they had their laptops open in front of them, and they were able to get guidance. But I heard that there's that strong. It was very interesting what you said, that you in a room full of professionals, and you said, "Oh, they're all really busy," and it was so exactly the same as what Surya said. The low-income rural housewives in India are really busy, this is everyone is. There's no one who's not. And this, it would seem to be, as long as we can make it relatable, we can put it into their lives. And how have you gone about doing that? How have you tried to create the content and make sure that it's something that they see really fits their lives and they want to use?
For Surya or for
No,
myself?
for Francis, sorry,
Yep.
I'm getting
Okay.
confused.
No problem. Well, the advantage that I have, if you can call it that, it's I prefer to do it face to face if possible, um, because s- these segments that I work with, they all, when you ask them, have you heard of this campaign or that campaign, about half of the class would have heard of it, and the governments roll out a lot of education, so that there isn't a shortage of education, but it's understanding. So I would have to customize the content and make it
Mm,
relatable to them. So I always ask when anyone comes here and say, "Oh, can you run a class for me? Can you run a class for my beneficiaries?" And I will have to ask them, what are their profiles? Are they mothers? Are they not mothers? Are they working? Are they not working? How old are their children? Because the content needs to be relatable. They need to know that they have something worth protecting, and who are
mm,
they protecting it for. Then they are a lot more interested in
yeah,
learning
yeah, yeah.
what they need to learn. And going back to your earlier question about education versus rolling out products. So why are organizations concerned? Are they concerned at all that if they include an educational
Mm,
piece that people will not be applying for that? And coming from a large organization also, and if you think about it, they are also segmentize into different departments. It compartmentalize, will be a better word, into different departments. The people who are rolling out the products have a certain KPI. The people who are rolling out the education has a
yeah,
different KPIs, and they are not in the same department, either are they in the same department. So it's very difficult for them to say, okay, put this in. It's like, why? It's gonna increase the clicks by another 5 times, and compared to my competitor, that is like
yeah.
80% more time spent
Drop out.
before they, yeah.
Drop out. Yeah,
So
yeah.
so all these things, and so the question that I have for the organizations usually is, what if you think about it this way? Okay, your product guys bring in 20% more signups than they did last year, and they hit their KPIs. But in the back, because of scams, you are
Hmm.
losing this amount.
Yeah,
So who's going to get impacted? Is it the
yeah.
product guys or is it you?
Mm,
So if you think about it collectively, when your organization starts losing money because of scams, everyone's bonuses is on the line. So
yeah,
should you care or not?
yeah. That's a very good point. And I think, to me, it comes back to what I feel underlines this question now. I think when we talked about financial literacy versus financial inclusion perhaps 10 years ago, there was the argument that Surya had earlier on, like financial inclusion first because it can be done, needs to be rolled out. Financial education without inclusion is pointless, and financial, but maybe we hadn't really got to the point where financial inclusion without education was really dangerous. It was maybe a little bit dangerous, but I feel like now what we've done with the advance of digitization, with the role of AI, with these enormous scam centers that are opening up on probably every continent on the planet these days, financial inclusion without education has opened up the scam industry to be one of the fastest growing financial industries on the planet. And I worry and I wonder, can we actually lay the blame at financial inclusion, saying we should not have been giving people these products without telling them how to use it? I suppose maybe a bit controversial for a financial inclusion week, but who wants to take that first? Surya, do you want to go with that one? What do you think? Can we blame financial inclusion for scams?
I wouldn't completely blame them, but I would surely say that, for any product, it should come with a very clear guide, right? How do you use it? How do you put it? And when you're completely focused on ensuring that you're getting the reach, you have to keep the machine running, but you forget about actually making the guide easy to read, easy to understand, so that people benefit from it. If you're missing that angle completely, people will not use your product, and it's not sustainable. After a point, people will fall apart. They will lose trust in the institutions. They would not want to benefit from the products which are actually made to benefit, made beneficial for them. So it's not a long-term game then. So I feel, most importantly, in the day and age, as you rightly mentioned, Michael, while you're thinking about how do I make it more inclusive for people, it's also very important to think of how do you provide the right education. I agree that sometimes organizations have their own challenges, they have their own limitations. Then there is a need to collaborate, right?
Yeah.
There are organizations who are focusing on education, or think of, okay, I play to my strengths. How can I get in someone who has a great strength in financial education? And
Yeah.
we work together, because all of us are working for the welfare of the society, right? To help our people. So I think that sort of mindset also should come in. I believe. Yeah.
I
That's
agree.
my
I
two
agree.
cents.
Francis, I'm going to ask you that question to be controversial in a financial inclusion. Should we be laying at least part of the blame for the explosion of scams at the rollout of financial inclusion without education?
I wouldn't. That would be saying that do we blame the phone companies for giving us a convenience of communication? So it isn't. So if you think back in the day when I was growing up, at least I can say that, when I was growing up, we all our phone numbers, all our addresses was in this big thick yellow book called the
Yeah,
Yellow Pages.
yeah,
And do we get people turning up at our houses, putting us at knife points? No, it's well, scammers will do what scammers will do, bad guys will do what bad guys will do. And it's looking at the change in the environment and looking at the progress that all these new innovations are giving us and exploiting them. So I wouldn't say that it is the fault of inclusion, financial inclusion, or the lack of education. It is really just any innovation that comes out. Look, AI was great, but then look what the concerns are coming up with deepfake being used to
yeah,
scam, with AI applications being designed specifically sold for scamming industry. I mean,
yeah,
the innovations are there.
yeah.
It's really what the bad guys would want
I
to use
mean,
it for.
the days have gone when we could just
Mm,
look at an email and go, "Well, that's badly spelt. It's probably a scam."
yes,
Right?
correct,
Um,
correct. Yeah.
okay, I won't ask you any more questions because I think you've answered my most controversial one very well between the two of you, and very diplomatically too. Well done. I probably wouldn't have managed it quite so well. I personally worry about two things. I worry that we've made finance so easy access that people have become used to clicking a button and used to replying on things, and we haven't told them all the details that goes behind that, and the number of ways they need to check what's going on there. But also, as you were explaining, Surya, that just the details of how to actually take advantage of of the financial inclusion system. So there are many, many ways that happens. But I'm so glad that both of you could be involved in this conversation, because I do feel that there is no answer to this without financial inclusion working hand in hand with financial education. I see sort of two little phrases pop into my head. One of them is it's like sort of financial inclusion without education is sort of like, sowing seed without plowing the field. You will get some benefit, but it'll be a bit random. You get no benefit plowing the field without seeds. You just got a plowed field. So you have to have the inclusion. But if you plow the field first, you can really reap the benefits of that. But I also feel there's this phrase, I think, in sort of DEI in America, where people say, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And people need to see the access. They need it illustrated of the benefits of being part of the financial system. And someone like them, and I believe both of you do this incredibly well, showing people like them, people like your beneficiaries, how they can become access and what the benefits are for them. And so with that note, I would just like to say thank you very much to both of you for doing the work that you do in improving people's lives and improving financial resilience in the areas you're in. And thank you very much for joining me today for this conversation.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
Yep. It was great chatting up with both of you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Francis.
And I should say before I leave this, thanks to the Financial Inclusion Week for inviting us to do this. It's been good fun. Thank you very much.